Okay, so this is the Multisim exercise, and I thought I'll go through it so that we'll be on the same page. So the first thing it says is, well, I've already saved. Well, let me just double check that I have saved it. Yeah, I have saved it. I'll make it just so that I'll have a different name. Okay. All right, so the first thing it says is I need to put a function generator, and I'm not too sure if you can see that, but it's up here on this right hand side, and if you hover over you will see function generator. Okay, so that's the first one. We turn this volume down a little bit, and then it says a resistor, right? So 1 kilo ohm resistor. So we just put that in here. And then oscilloscope connected just like so oscilloscopes are also on the right hand side, and let me see if I can turn this camera around a little bit. So if I hover over multimeter, function generator, watt meter, and below that is oscilloscope. So bring that in. Okay, and connect it like a voltmeter. So let me just move this resistor down a little bit so that I can have some more space, and I'm going to turn it around, and you will see why I'm doing that. It'll be easier to work with it turned around. Oh, what's that? I would short circuit it. Okay, let's try that again. Go. And I'm going to put should I put some grounds in here? We'll need them. Okay, so we'll bring that here. Connect that ground. Connect this ground. We'll change that color to green. Alright. And a frequency counter. Frequency counters are also on the right hand side. So if you hover over multimeter, function generator, watt meter, oscilloscope, 4-channel oscilloscope, board plotter, frequency counter. There we go. Just going to connect it right here. Move it a little bit, put some space. And a digital multimeter. I'm going to do that. I may need some space here. This multimeter, connect it like that, and the negative side I can just connect it to ground. So I don't need to come all the way down here for that. Just change this color a little bit so that I can differentiate it. Then to connect the oscilloscope, it's just like a digital multimeter. See the plus side here? Just go to connect it to the plus side coming here. Okay. And this, let me copy that, and I need to connect that to ground. So we're just going to connect it to ground. Okay. Let me change this color just a little bit that I can differentiate it. There we go. So I have now the oscilloscope, frequency counter, multimeter, and function generator, frequency counter, multimeter, and oscilloscope. Let me just double check my settings are right. So it says the function generator needs to, I'm right here, right up here on number 1. It says function generator, adjust it, you see this part? So adjust it to 1 kilohertz and 10 volts peak. So you see where it says hertz? So just go to 1 kilohertz. Okay? And it says voltage peak, so that's this voltage right here. And it says adjust it to 10, so it is correct, right? So that part is correct. We don't need to do any settings on this one. I just move that down here. I do need to double check that this is set on AC. You see how it's set on DC? I need to change it to AC right there. I'll put that up here. And the oscilloscope is, the instructions say, I just double clicked on the oscilloscope, and we can see once you turn the waveform on, what will happen. I think I have another circuit running. See this, it's not lighting up for me. Let's see if I have another circuit. Yeah, let me turn that off. Okay. Alright, so now I have the green, right? So, and then it says the instructions to snip and upload it. Okay. Let's see if I can move this a little bit, give myself some space. So move this function generator, frequency counter. I'll turn the power on and we'll see what happens. Okay, so here's the waveform, and obviously we can't read anything out of that, right? But I'm reading 1 kilohertz, you see it down here? So that part is correct. And I can do frequency or period. So it'll 1 millisecond, right, period. It's the inverse of the frequency. Okay, so if I look at the voltmeter, it's 0.707. Remember, this reads the RMS voltage. Okay, so let's take a look at what the peak voltage is. Obviously, we can't read it like this. What I need to do is I need to change this time base. So I'm going in the wrong direction. You see, I'm changing it right here. Right here. Okay. So that's a pretty nice waveform, and I'm going to do it single so that I can see just only one waveform. It doesn't flicker on me so much. So that's a nice looking waveform. And how to measure it is just, you see these cursors, you can move them around up here and it will measure it. So that's the peak to peak voltage. Peak voltage from this peak to this one. So that's reading, I'm going down to here. Okay, so it's reading a peak voltage of what, 9.7 volts. So that's essentially 10 volts, right? We turn this power off for a time being because it's going to flicker on me if not. Oh, so actually I went to peak to peak. So peak voltage. So at peak voltage, if I just move it a little bit more, see, that's 10 volts peak, right? You see this bottom number here? So that's 10 volts peak. That means from this top to this point here. And if you multiply that by 0.707, you'll get 7 volts, which is this number right here. Okay, and the peak-to-peak voltage will be obviously enough double that. So that's peak-to-peak voltage. I was trying to adjust it to get 20, but I think that's the closest I can get. So 19.6 whatever, it's 20 volts, right? So peak to peak. That's the peak-to-peak voltage. So we know what is the peak-to-peak voltage, we know what the peak voltage is. What we don't know is what is the voltage itself. Sorry, did I say peak? So I know the frequency, that it's the peak-to-peak. I'm sorry, let me back up. I know the voltage, peak-to-peak, and I know the peak voltage. Peak-to-peak is this 20 volts down here, and peak voltage is this number here. I'm going to move this cursor just around, so that's 10 volts, right? So now I know peak-to-peak, peak, RMS voltage. RMS, I got it from right here, RMS. What I don't know is what is the frequency of the signal. So to do that, I need to look at a complete cycle. So starting from here, going back to this peak right here. Let me just move this cursor. So it's giving me its negative numbers, and the reason for that is I have the 2 down here, so I'll just move that here. Back this up here. So that's the peak-to-peak. But I'm sorry, that's a complete cycle. Starts from here, goes to the bottom, comes back to this peak right here. So this is, I'm getting from this peak to this peak, and I'm getting 1 millisecond. So 1 millisecond, that's the period, right? So that's the same period right here, see? And then the frequency of that is the inverse of that, which is 1 kilohertz. So the inverse of 1 millisecond is 1 kilohertz, which is our frequency. Okay. So just since we're doing this, I'll change this frequency to 10 kilohertz. Okay. We'll turn the power back on. And you notice that this, again, you know, the waveforms got all scrunched up, right? So what I need to do is to kind of spread them a little bit so that I can read them. Oh. And turn the power off. So you'll notice that the voltage did not change, just the frequency. So this peak to peak. Okay. And I get what, 100 microseconds, which is 100 microseconds, right? And then the frequency is 10 kilohertz, which is the 10 kilohertz set right here. So also let's change this a little bit. Let's do I'll change this to 5 volts peak to peak. I turn the power back on and make it auto right here. And you notice now, you know, it's much smaller, the waveform. I mean, the height is much smaller, right? So it's kind of hard to see that. So let me see if I can make that the divisions a little bit bigger. So 5 volts peak, let's see if I'm getting 5 volts peak. That's peak to peak, so we go back to the peak right here. So it's 5 volts peak, right? In case those negative numbers bother you, I'll straighten that out. put that cursor here, put this cursor here. Okay, so 4.7 something is 5 volts, right? Now if you want to make it a little bit bigger than that, you can always turn the power back on. See, the waveform is a little bit bigger now. So I can't see this right here, so let me just drag this cursor a little bit more. By the way, I was changing the wrong channel. That's why it was not getting bigger. Should I change that? There we go. So now you can see, right? It's much easier to see this channel. I was changing channel B, by the way, which is this one right here. We don't have anything connected to that. So now it's correct. Okay, so should be getting a waveform, something. You're supposed to do the 10 kilohertz, well, I mean 1 kilohertz, 10 volts peak, right? So let me do 500 volts peak. Can't see it at all, right? So what I need to do is change the time, the voltage, which is right here. Now you can see it. So it's supposed to get 500, 450 something. Just move it a little bit more. 500, right? Well, 510. It's pretty close. Right. That's using Multisim to measure peak to peak, peak, RMS, and the frequency and the period.